Welcome to Tech Ties and Human Vibes, where we explore the tech that powers modern businesses and drives innovation. I'm Adam, and with me is Nancy. We'll be talking to entrepreneurs, innovators, and industry experts about the tools they use, the challenges they face, and how technology is shaping the future of work. Let's dive in.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome to a new episode of Tech Ties and Human Vibes. And we are vibing here with our special guest, Michelle Bournstein. Michelle, thank you so much for joining Adam and I today on our episode. And we are so excited to dive in. But first, tell us a little bit about you and what you do.
Yeah, I'm excited to be with you guys today. I started a coaching practice in 2021 after years of leading within an organization, a fairly large organization. And I just was passionate about helping the people in our tech industry versus systems, which is where I originally started in 1999. So I evolved over the years and really just find that working with individuals and people, helping owners and leaders achieve their dreams by empowering their team to step up was really where my passion was.
Michelle, I got a question for you. You,
Mhm.
your title. Okay, so on your signature, the email that you sent to me is CEO, okay, author, and certified dream manager. Can you tell me a little bit about that? Because I want to change my title to something really cool and sexy like that.
I love it. So, in my leadership journey, one of the first books that I was given because I was really struggling with how to do what I needed to do with a team. So, I had been a systems consultant for many years and no issues. And then when I was trying to work with a team, it wasn't working. So I was given a book by my boss at the time who said, you need to read Certified Dream Manager by Matthew Kelly. And I thought, this is crazy. Why would I think about dreaming at work? Like, we need to get to work. So I read the book and was completely blown away by the concept of dreaming with individual people at work. So not the dreams that you do at night. We're not like this morning I woke up and was like, what a crazy dream. No, it's the dreams that motivate you, that drive you forward. It's what creates the goals that we have for ourselves. And so when I started to explore what it was like to be a dream manager within an organization, I just was blown away by the connection that you could make with people, the relationships, knowing something about each individual person just got me going every morning. I just couldn't wait to hear people's dreams at work. So when I started my coaching practice, that was my first certification to get because I was just so passionate about being able to bring that messaging to more leaders and owners because without knowing what people are dreaming about, we really don't know about them. So now I carry that title. And my favorite line whenever you go to like functions and you sit down and someone's like, what do you do? Instead of that, I ask them, what are you dreaming about? And they're always startled by that because they're like, what are you asking me? But I love it. Absolutely. Yes, that's what I get to do through that certification. So in coaching sessions, yeah, so like we could have a dream session and there's 12 categories for where people typically dream in. And so just prompting people with these categories, some example questions, but it's just fascinating to see strengthening within organizations when we do this as a group. I do have people who will come together in peer groups, so a bunch of owners or leaders, and just being able to hear what people are dreaming about. And then there's always overlap. So one of my dreams will always be shared by someone else. And I'm like, oh, let's do that together. So anyway, so I just love talking about that. I know that's not necessarily our topic for today,
I
but
know, but
yeah.
we have that in common, right? One of those things that you had mentioned, which how we connected was writing a book, and so we're both dreaming of
Yes.
writing a book, and so I
Hmm.
absolutely believe that. But I like, how wonderful is it to start off a conversation with what are you dreaming about? And, like most people ask the question of like, how are you? And you give a default answer of fine or good. But if you ask a question that gets someone outside of their norm, That is such a powerful question to ask somebody. What are some of the
Yeah.
craziest
Yeah.
answers you've gotten?
So, one guy that I met, like I had known and worked with him, but never met him in person. And we were at a conference, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna go sit by him. And the first thing I asked him was what he was dreaming about, and he like jumped back physically, like, what? What are you talking about? And I'm like, what's going on with you, besides work? And he's like, I want to get a yacht. I need to get my captain's license. I'm going to travel the world. I'm like, me too. So, and interestingly, I've had a couple of people say planes and yachts and things like that. And that always surprises me because they don't seem to be very adventurous like that, like it just, that one startles me. Um, but I've, but I always, whenever I hear people's dreams, I am always amazed at how they're so much bigger than money. So I've never heard anyone say, I want a new title at work or I want a raise. It's always way, way bigger than that, which I think is nice because as leaders and owners, a lot of times all we hear from people is that they want more money. And that's a really uncomfortable conversation to have for most people. So being able to know just what else drives them, what else motivates them is really, really cool.
That's really fun, actually. This is a
Yep.
rabbit trail that I could easily go down for hours, to be honest with you.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I've got to. So we've somehow got.
All right, all right. I got the question. I got the question. I'm curious.
I love it, and I have like a wide variety of more questions about this, but I'm going to postpone those. Maybe you and I will just have a call later. That might be.
We could have a dream. It's called dream storming, and we could have a dream storming question session, and then you can unlock all your dreams. So
So you
maybe
you
maybe
do
all your
more than.
listeners would want to come together for that. So anyway, go ahead.
Oh, that actually might
That sounds
be
like fun.
that might be really good, actually. We could do another
Let's do it.
podcast on this.
Let's do it.
Oh
Very
yeah.
good,
Okay.
very good.
All
So
right.
you help companies or help individuals find out how they can be more successful in businesses. Is
Hmm.
that correct? I want to make sure I
Absolutely.
fully understand. Okay,
Hmm.
and then so give me a little bit more in depth on that.
Yeah, so when I first started exploring this concept, I found that a lot of the people that I worked with and consulted with on their systems, so Autotask, ConnectWise, QuickBooks, whatever, um, they typically struggled with the people side. So they would come to me and say, my system is broken. And then we would go through all this work and find it's actually your people. And it's not necessarily that the people couldn't do the thing, it was that they didn't have the right relationships. They didn't have the right focused conversation about what are we trying to achieve here and like why is this thing important. And so the systems didn't do what they needed to do because the people just weren't connected and aligned and focused and they weren't working together. So probably 15 years ago, I started with EOS and just self implemented inside of our organization and was blown away by the power of aligning people together for the common goal, which then allowed the company to succeed. Um, it really at that time it piqued my interest of how do I get the people motivated, and I ended up finding that I was spending a whole lot more time coaching with owners, leaders, to talk about how to communicate, how to connect, how to innovate or create solutions for things, and it really didn't have anything to do with configuring a system to work for them. So that's what really got me going. And I found that if I could figure out how to help owners trust their people, empower their people, then the leaders would then grow their team up, and then the team members would feel good, accomplished, successful. The company would be successful. People would get raises. People would get bonuses. So it almost the line that connects all of those individuals working towards one thing inside of an organization is really what I am passionate about helping and trying to use tools to do that. So the Dream Manager, Certified Dream Manager, is just one of the tools that I will use to help companies take themselves to the next level.
Now you mentioned EOS. Is that still a program that you use today, or do you use a variation of it, a hybrid of it, or kind of did your own, or what's that look like?
Yeah, so I am not an EOS implementer, but completely understand the practice and the value of it. So what I typically do is encourage people to implement some sort of system. So it could be EOS, it could be Pinnacle, it could be a hybrid, but the key is that they're coming together and actually having recurring conversations, not complaining about things, not just hanging out. Like, what are we talking about? What's holding us back? What are the issues? What are the to-dos? Holding people accountable. So when I encourage people to implement something in their organization, it's really with the intent that they need to stop working in their siloed, I got my department, I'm doing my thing, you do your thing. They have to come together, and whatever tool that they want to use to do that, it's I'm good with it. So
I find that that's something that
encourage it.
happens quite often as an organization is growing, is instead of it becoming more community-like with communication across the board, it's more siloed off,
Mhm.
right? And different departments aren't
Yep.
communicating with each other. So what would you say is like one of the biggest misconceptions that people have about building relationships at work and in those certain environments so that those silos don't happen?
Yeah, so I think most people want to do it themselves. So many leaders that I work with have been doing it themselves. They were high performers. They know how to do everything that's in their department or area. And so they just continue to do that as they grow up into leadership positions. But what that does is create very siloed and segmented experiences. And what I believe is that people think I can just do it myself. But when they get to a certain point, they can't scale that way. And that was something that I learned. And the reason why I was even brought into creating teams in the company I was at before, I had been doing it myself, all the systems work, all the report building, all the training processes. And at some point, I just couldn't, there was no more time. I couldn't bill anymore. I couldn't increase revenues anymore. I couldn't be any more profitable. So I had to create a team. But I had to also learn that I couldn't just bring people into the team and say, do the work. I had to have a relationship with them. So I think the biggest misconception is just people don't understand that when they spend time creating a relationship with others, it allows them to be more productive, more efficient, have more time, even though it seems like you're managing a bunch of people issues and it takes more time.
From a
Yep.
leader's standpoint, how do you create a relationship with your employee and not go too far?
Mhm.
Because
So
there's a gray area right there, right?
yeah, yeah. I think in the tech industry, so that's my core focus space. I find that people typically like to figure things out, and they chose the technology space because of the equipment, the software, something about tech. They don't realize that most of what we do is people related, whether we're supporting people, working with people. So figuring out how to have a relationship with someone is sometimes mysterious. What I encourage is that we keep it professional, we keep it respectful, and we treat others the way that we would want to be treated. So, in most cases, I find that I'm pushing leaders to figure out how to listen, how to ask questions, because a lot of times we just are like, I know the answer. We're just going to move through it. So we practice how to be curious about others. We practice understanding that we're human, we're not robots, we're not computers, and so we have feelings and all of those things, but we try to create some space where people can have conversations with each other in a safe way. They don't feel judged, and usually I'm not seeing where it's not crossing the bounds. Sometimes I'll see someone come into the organization who's really upbeat, like it just they talk about everything, they talk about their family, they talk about their home life. And in those cases, I do encourage leaders to um, help them understand some things we share and some things we don't, which typically after one conversation of that, people get they get the picture. So they're not crossing boundaries too much.
Funny enough, I have a friend that talks too much.
There's
And
always one.
There's always one. Yeah. And they're like, everybody else like, what's happening? Um, yeah. So something that I've been reading this book by John C. Maxwell. I mean, he's written so many books, but his book called The Five Levels of Leadership, his whole section two, the permission to lead someone, talks about relationships. And if you don't build a relationship in level two, so first level is title, you're the title the leader, and therefore that's it. That's what you get. And the goal is to move up. But the level two is permission to lead. The only way people give you permission to lead them is if you have a relationship with them. And so he spends the whole section, that whole chapter, talking about it and different ways to do it. And I'm like, yep, that makes perfect sense, because you can't just say, come, do your work, get your paycheck, go home. If you don't know anything about them, if they don't feel comfortable trusting you and sharing with you, you will not get the productivity that you're hoping, and that investment will not pay off.
That's a great point. And a lot of the times that's part of like building any relationship. So to think of that, like if we're trying to build a relationship with prospects, the very first thing is trust, establishing trust, right?
Yeah,
And so within our
yeah.
teams, we have to be able to do that from the get-go. So how can a leader ensure that they are taking the right steps to build trust from the very beginning, from the moment that, let's say, they interview someone all the way through onboarding them and now incorporating them into their team and introducing them to everyone else, right? Because that's like new kid on the
Mhm.
block kind of thing.
Yeah. So your point is like 100% accurate, where we spend all this time in the how do we get our clients to trust us? How do we build that relationship with prospects so that they'll move forward? Um, I don't think we spend enough time when we're bringing new people into the environment focusing on that foundation of trust. I do carry another certification from Patrick Lencioni's book, The Five Dysfunctions of a Team. And trust, he starts with, if you don't have trust, you cannot move up in a team structure. You cannot have conflict. You cannot get commitment, hold accountable, or get results without trust. So the way that I encourage the trust piece to be built is direct one-on-one coaching, intentional coaching in that space, where you're saying, maybe it's weekly, maybe it's daily, sometimes monthly. We're going to come together. We're going to not talk about projects. We're not going to talk about to-do lists. We're going to just spend time with each other, because when we can just communicate and ask curious questions, you know, just like Adam, you started and you said, what's the certified dream manager? That's a curious question. And then you saw how excited I was to talk about it. When we do those kinds of questions with intention inside of coaching, we will build trust with someone almost immediately. So often I'll hear owners who will say, I can't get my team to do, or I don't even know if I have a team. Like, I have people who come and meet with me, but I'm not sure we're actually a team. My first question is, how often do you coach one on one? Usually it's never, or every now and then if we're working on a project or when they stop in. And what I do is teach owners and leaders how to coach so that they can do an effective intentional conversation with their individual team players, which then allows trust to form within, usually I say, if you're coaching weekly for an hour, within 3 to 4 weeks you will see trust building. It may not fix everything, like if there's ripples from before and past experiences, it won't change what might have happened in the past, but it creates a new way to go forward. I just had a client come to me in January and say, we have a team member, it's a make or break kind of thing, like we've got to figure this out. And within 3 weeks, they were already communicating at a different level. And I just did a recap last week, and the leader is just ecstatic because her team member blew all the numbers out of the water. had their best performing month ever.
Oh, wow.
They're relating to each other, they talk to each other, they're sharing, and they're not doing anything different other than direct intentional coaching each week. And it's been really amazing. So it's quick.
When you say trust building, the,
Hmm.
the only thing that comes to mind for me is standing on a chair and a group of people
Yes.
standing behind me,
And then
and
you
I
push them.
fall into them.
Yeah,
Adam,
no.
I'm
Um,
sorry. I don't think that I would be able to catch you.
we're not going to do
I don't
that.
think
We
you
do
would either,
not.
Nancy.
It's not quite like that. Yeah, we're not going to go back to the 80s, but trust building for me is when someone can spend more time talking and you spend more time listening.
Mm.
Ah,
So when people are able to talk, and they could talk about anything, but when they're able to talk and you're genuinely, generously listening to them, they will almost immediately feel like you trust them, which then allows them to trust you. So and that's why I say the coaching, the dedicated time to meeting with and spending time with someone. Ideally, you as a leader would be not talking, asking a few questions, that's it. But the
yeah,
person talking is able to talk and you're actually listening. So you're hearing, engaging, but not dominating the conversation.
right.
So when I say trust building, we don't have to jump off. Now, if you want to jump with someone and you guys talk it out as you're floating down, like jumping out of a plane or something, that's up to you. That's, I wouldn't recommend it, but I don't want to do it.
Well,
But
Nancy's
yeah.
going to go skydiving for her
Right?
birthday.
That's a dream.
What,
Okay.
That is a
yeah,
So
dream I have.
there
that's
Yeah,
a
you
and I
dream.
told Adam he's got to hold
So
Okay.
my hand
So
throughout the whole time,
okay.
I
So
will hold her hand
now
as she jumps out the
and then he's
out the,
gonna let go.
and then I'll let go.
okay, so if that's the way you guys want to do trust building, I'm all for it. But not necessarily everyone doesn't have to do that. That's your dream, but yeah. So really, I do find that when I started coaching, I was not very good at it because I was just talking the whole time, like, oh, I'm so excited about this. And then I switched to generously listening, which is a concept out there. I do teach my clients how to generously listen. It's uncomfortable because you have to be quiet for 2 minutes, just 2 minutes. And it's like, and the first time I did it was in a yoga retreat with a stranger, and I was so uncomfortable because I'm like, what am I supposed to do? And they were like, just sit there. But once I learned that, I went back to my team and they were like, "What's wrong with you? Why aren't you talking?" And I'm like, "I'm generously listening." And then it almost overnight, like completely shifted the dynamics of the relationship. They would say, "I just trust you, so like I know you're listening. I trust that you're going to give me something, but I'm just connected." And so that was the start of building that trust building
Wow.
That's
exercise.
awesome. I
Yeah.
What
love
is
that.
for those of us, especially in the tech world and being in the tech world, some of us really love to talk about the technology, forgetting the fact that we're
Yes.
humans, right? And there's nothing wrong with that, but for these folks, me included sometimes. What advice can you give to help them like just keep it quiet? Keep it quiet for those 2 minutes. Don't talk about the bits and bobs and everything else that goes along with it, but focus on listening, right? Focus on the person in front of you and
Mhm.
listening. How can they work on that?
Yeah, they do that. Yeah. So I this is why I like coaching that's scheduled. So, you'll always have people who are like, "Can I pop in and chat with you?" And then you have to adjust to them. But if you say, "Hey, let's do coaching once a week. This is our time." You spend 5 to 10 minutes pre-session decompressing, turning off all the alerts, stopping the checking of all things that are technology related, and breathing. So some people meditate, some people just look outside the window, whatever it is that they want to do, but pull away from the technology just a little bit because I find that amps us up or gets us energized. But remembering that generous listening doesn't have to be completely silent, but the goal is to create enough space for someone to really share what they're thinking about. So I like the dynamics that we have in our conversation just today. You guys, when I stop talking, you'll start talking. Inevitably, people will meet others who don't just start talking after they're asked a question. They have to think about it. So by thinking, I need to give this person a minute, I need to give this person 2 minutes. Sometimes when they're done talking, you might need to be quiet a little longer so that they can add to it, which is really the adding to it part is usually the most important part of the conversation. But if we're not quiet for it, then we miss it.
Mm.
So I try to remind people, be intentional, don't get distracted. Remember, you're supposed to be listening more than talking. Really prepare for the session, which then allows them to be successful a little bit. It is something that you have to practice, and it takes a little time. So
Love that. I love that
Love
you
it.
were talking about, the being quiet, at least. I've read this book called Quiet, the Power of Introverts by Susan Cain. And in that book, she talks about how in our society, we're not necessarily used to seeing quiet as powerful. We're in a society where being more boisterous and more just out there that's what we reference as being powerful. And so me as someone that is introverted, and a lot of tech people also being introverted, that's something that that book really gave me a great perspective for myself, but also realizing that that's where the power comes from, is in those quiet moments, allowing someone else to come through and to be able to speak their truth and what they need, right? To ultimately speaking, give you the answers to what it is they need for you to help them.
absolutely, and I think that often we have one person in an organization who's really boisterous and outgoing, and then they're the ones that complain that they always have to do all the talking. And I usually ask them to just stop. Like, you don't have to, just stop. And then they look at me like, well, who's going to talk? I'm like, someone will talk, someone will contribute, but you have to create some space for that. So I love that book. I made a note. I'm gonna check it out. So
Yeah, it's a great book. It's a great book. And you know what's funny is, usually in conferences and things like that, during Q&A, like you'll start off and it's very quiet in the room, but then someone does raise their hand. Someone does speak up.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that you say that.
Break the silence.
For all you talkers out there, you don't have to carry that burden alone.
That's hysterical. Well,
mhm.
listen. It has been a great pleasure of ours to talk to you, and I don't want to take up your entire day, but I do have another question for you, and then maybe an ending question there. But what is some advice that you could give to somebody to, I don't know, help them be a better, either a better listener or a better relationship?
Mhm.
How to create a relationship? What is it? What is some advice you could give to, let's just say, the MSP, because that's our primary audience?
Mhm.
What's some advice you could give to them?
So, from this book, the John C. Maxwell book, something that I liked about his section on relationships were he had 4 questions that he challenged people to answer for themselves. Um, where he said, if you want to know if you're on track for building a relationship with someone, he said, what are to ask yourself, what are 3 non-business things what 3 things that are non-business related do you know about this person? What does this person value? What are the person's top 3 concerns? And what does this person hope for in life? And I like to put, instead of hope for, dream about in life. Um, and when I read those questions, I found that it, when I was reflecting on my own relationships with my team, I was thinking, well, do I know these things? So it helps you just assess, where are you? And then if you don't know those things, then go find them out. So figure out, what are the non-business things that you know about this person? Like, do they like cats? Do they like to travel? Like, Nancy wants to skydive, and now that's in my brain and it's stuck there. And, and it's just like we put things into our brains um, that that don't have to be business related, but I think often we just think that we have to. So my point in saying that is, if you were to assess, what do I know about this person? What's important to them? What are they dreaming about? What are they concerned about? Then if we don't know those things, start to ask questions around it. When we ask questions around it, that's how we learn, because we're listening. And then when we're listening, that's building the relationship, that's building the trust, that's making the connections that we need. And then very quickly, you will realize, oh, I have a relationship with this person, whereas before I did not. Um, what I found fascinating about the dreaming when I brought it to the organization where I was at before is we did the dream session. So we had already had our list, but as a group, we did dream boards, which again, I was like, okay, are we doing this at work? Like, this seems weird. Um, but we did. And I happened to be sitting by someone who I had known for 15 years, worked with her, and she had put a car on her dream board. And I just assumed, oh, she must want a new car. And so I asked her, I'm like, oh, you have a picture of a car, you want a new car? And she said, no, actually, my son is receiving treatment at St. Jude's in Tennessee for a really rare form of cancer. And she said during COVID, they weren't allowed to hand out toys to the kids because they didn't know if COVID could spread like that. So all the kids, when they go there, they get um, like cars and dolls and whatever it is that they want. Um, so she was really moved by that, and they said the only way that we can hand out toys is if they're in packaging that can be disinfected or sanitized. So she started a car drive in our little central Louisiana area and managed to collect 5,000 Matchbox cars in their
That's
Wow.
awesome.
packaging. And
That's
then
awesome.
I was like watching her, like completely blown away, because this is a person I had seen grow up in our company and just never would have thought, like, at all. So she completed her, and I of course like gave her money. I was like, please buy as many cars. Like, I was so excited to help her. She was getting ready to go out of town for her son's treatment. And she came to the office and she's like, come see what I have in my car. And she popped her trunk and she had 5,000 Matchbox cars in
That's
these
amazing.
boxes. And and I just think, like, I just we just don't know unless we start to have conversations with people. We don't know what they're going through. We don't know what excites them, what motivates them. So spending some time with people, listening to them, is really the quickest way to build a relationship.
Yeah, as you were
So
asking those questions, I was thinking to myself, do I know this about Adam and Leslie? I think so. I think so, but
that's right.
we'll have to see afterwards.
Mhm.
That may
Yep.
start some questions here internally as well.
Hmm. Hmm. I love it.
Michelle, if someone wanted to find you and do a dream session with you or learn how to build a relationship with their employees or vice versa, how would they do that?
So I am on LinkedIn. People can email me at michelle@techanalyticsgroup.com, which I love that domain because sometimes it's hard to spell and only technical people know how to spell it. So email is usually best because I'm always on it. But if you find me on LinkedIn and you connect through there, that's perfectly fine too. And I I just want, if people are interested in exploring what their company can look like, where they're not the ones that have to do all the work, or they're dreaming of taking a vacation. One of my clients, after a year, took his first vacation in 30 years. Like, he was like a 3-week trip,
Wow.
and also his first time to Europe. And I was just blown away that he's like, I just never dreamed that I could go to Europe, and certainly not for 3 weeks. And so I just, whatever it is that people want to do in their life, whether they're business owners or leaders, I think that if they reach out, we can definitely share some ideas. And I'm always looking to help people achieve their dreams. So
Love it. Love it. Well, thank you so much for being on the show with us. And we will share all of those notes as well in all of the comments and all of
awesome.
that so people know where to find you. Um, and so we will see everyone next time. Thanks so much for joining
Okay. I love it. All right.
me.
Thank you for
Thanks,
having
guys.
me.